P.G. Wodehouse wrote that it's never difficult to distinguish between a Scotsman with a grievance and a ray of sunshine. That's me, that is. I know I'm often grim-faced, but I promise I didn't used to be. It's a product of the times we're living in. My antidote to the grimness, and God help us, there's a lot of grimness on account of all the lies we're told by the oligarchy, is to pay attention to all those stubbornly telling the truth in this time of lies. This week, I spent an hour talking to my friend, Dr. Aseem Malhotra. He's a cardiologist, which is to say a heart doctor, which is so very appropriate for Aseem because his heart is most definitely in the right place. He has a documentary film out now. It's called First Do No Farm, about how we're being harmed instead of helped by the medical and pharmaceutical industries. On the website promoting the film, he writes, quote, "The harsh reality is this. We are drowning in a sea of pharmaceuticals pushed upon us by an industry that has long since abandoned its moral compass in pursuit of profit. Big Pharma, more powerful and profitable than ever before, has infiltrated every aspect of our healthcare system. Our regulatory bodies, meant to protect us, have instead become beholden to the very corporations they should be overseeing. Let me be clear, this is not a victimless crime. The cost is measured in human lives, in suffering and the erosion of trust in a system that should heal, not harm. We've witnessed these companies pay billions in fines as if they were mere parking tickets, their CEOs offering hollow apologies before returning to their boardrooms. The numbers are staggering, almost beyond comprehension." Close quote. In reply to Aseem, I say, preach, brother. Big Pharma lied to us most recently about the products they pushed as vaccines. It's that simple, even though there have as yet been no consequences whatever for any of the liars. Safe and effective was a damned lie. They knew in advance that their products would not stop transmission. They knew in advance there would be lethal side effects like myocarditis and a slew of other hurt besides. Lies, lies, and more lies. It's the truth that Aseem Malhotra is telling in First Do No Farm, and yet all manner of tricks are being pulled to prevent people even knowing of the film's existence, far less seeing it. What Aseem is saying rings as true as a bell. We use that idiom when we mean we know something just sounds right. It comes from centuries ago and the time of casting church bells. Bells that were used to communicate messages to the people when there were few other means to do so. A well-cast bell would sound right, and so was said to ring true. Around the same time, when precious metals were scarce, crooks made counterfeit coins from base metals. People would check by dropping a coin onto a stone slab. A fake would give a flat, dull tone, while a gold or silver coin would ring true like a well-cast bell. We live now not in democracies, but in oligarchies, government by the rich for the rich. Those oligarchs have grown accustomed to lying to us, and for the longest time it was made easy for them by their ownership of the media. Their lies were offered to us as the news, and their version of the news was the only game in town. For years we've been lied to about one war after another. In 2003, the then British Prime Minister Tony Blair, hand in hand with President George Bush in the United States of America, lied us into war in Iraq, lies about weapons of mass destruction they knew, absolutely knew didn't exist, lied us into a war that claimed the lives of over 1 million people. Blair is still at large, of course, as is Bush. Since then, courtesy of the internet, the alternative media escaped the clutches of the oligarchs, at least for a while, hence the effort to take control of the internet, of social media, all the censorship and silencing, the ongoing effort to re-establish control of the message, which means freedom to lie with impunity once more. Another hero of mine is the independent American journalist Matt Taibbi. Last weekend, he spoke at the Rescue the Republic rally held in Washington, D.C. Among other things, he talked about listening recently to John Kerry, former US Secretary of State and long-time climate activist, complaining to the World Economic Forum about how the First Amendment to the US Constitution, the one about freedom of speech, quote, stands as a major block, making it really hard to govern. If this is what an oligarch like Kerry feels free to say out loud now, the Kerry who is so rich he forgot his wife owned a private jet, then to put it mildly, things have reached a pretty pass. Kerry has been talking nonsense for years about the so-called climate crisis, which is in reality a multi-billion-pound hoax perpetrated to immiserate populations and further enrich the few. Kerry bleated about how it's really hard to build consensus, and that he and others like him had to win the right to govern and be free to implement change. He lamented the fact that nowadays people self-select where they go for news and information. I mean, how dare people self-select where they go for information rather than just accepting without question whatever nonsense the likes of Kerry wants to tell the world next? Billionaire activist George Soros has spent hundreds of millions of dollars buying up over 220 radio stations across America just months before elections there. Let's wonder why. God forbid anyone on any of those stations should tell Americans any truth. In the same litany of drivel at the World Economic Forum, Kerry complained about the lack of accountability on the part of those putting out independent thought. Where's his accountability? For nonsense like when he said a decade and a half ago that within 5 years the Arctic would be ice-free in the summer. Never happened. He predicted ruinous sea level rises. Never happened. And while we're on the subject of accountability, maybe we could pause to demand some accountability for what's been done to us in the past 4 years by more of those determined to control the narrative and build consensus, by which they mean no one is saying anything but what the rich and powerful want to hear said. Where's the accountability for those killed or damaged beyond healing by those jabs, by ruinous lockdowns? The oligarchs accept zero accountability for millions dead or hurt by their wars for profit, unsafe drugs and medical interventions, bad food. They ignore accountability while the little guy is held to account and jailed for posting against the narrative on social media. What Kerry and his World Economic Forum ilk want to be free of, said Matt Taibbi, is the First Amendment, and more specifically, they want to be free of us, shielded from us, the likes of us that have questions we want answered. Those of us that are apparently obstacles to what they call consensus, but what is really their version of events, which is lies placed beyond the reach of any interrogation. The rich and powerful act this way because they fear us, and deep down they know they're in the wrong, and we are in the right. Taibbi quoted the First Amendment. It's truly an elegant thought, elegantly expressed by James Madison. Quote, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Close quote. The US was founded by fathers of ambition and audacity. Somewhere, somewhen, that place, that ideal, was taken over by a parasitic entity determined only to stifle and control the human spirit in pursuit of wealth and power. The same is true of the oligarchs on this side of the Atlantic, where the ambiguous nonsense of hate speech is used as a catch-all for censoring not falsehoods, but truth that gets in the way of those who need to have their lies believed in order to get their way. Another hero who spoke in the past few days was Julian Assange, who broke the silence he had maintained since his release from the black hole of Belmarsh. Quote, I am not free today because the system worked. I am free today after years of incarceration because I pled guilty to journalism. I pled guilty to obtaining information from a source, and I pled guilty to informing the public what that information was. Close quote. The story Assange has to tell is astonishing. He described how in 2017 Donald Trump appointed two wolves in MAGA hats in the form of Mike Pompeo, a Kansas congressman and former arms industry executive, as CIA director, and William Barr, a former CIA officer, as US Attorney General. By then, WikiLeaks had exposed the CIA's infiltration of French political parties, its spying on French and German leaders, its spying on the European Central Bank, European economics ministries, and standing orders to spy on French industry as a whole. Subsequently, according to Assange, Pompeo directed the CIA to draw up plans to kill him in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. Assange was a publisher, publishing the truth as publishers are supposed to, and the response of the powerful he had inconvenienced was to conspire to murder him. Pompeo is still at large, at liberty, beyond accountability. This is how frightened the powerful are of the truth, and of people who seek to tell the truth. Where is the accountability for what was done to Julian Assange for publishing the truth? Taibbi told the rally in Washington that freedom of speech is now frequently described as a stalking horse for hate and discrimination, and that speech is mentioned in so-called reputable media only as a vector for the informational disease known only as misinformation. The end game is not controlling speech, he said. They're already doing that. The end game is getting us to forget we ever had anything to say. Former First Lady Hillary Clinton spoke last week about her fears of misinformation about presidential candidate Kamala Harris. She said the press needs a consistent narrative about the danger that Trump poses to the country in the coming weeks. She warned that foreign actors like Russia, Iran and China may fuel disinformation on social media, seeking to influence the election. She said she believed a story about Harris is coming this month. So I don't know what it's going to be, she said, but it will be something, and we'll have to work very, very hard to make sure that it's exposed as the lie that it is. Warning of misinformation and lies from the same Hillary Clinton who was behind the Russiagate lies, pushed relentlessly to discredit Donald Trump in 2016. Here's the thing, freedom, specifically freedom of speech, is openly targeted now by oligarchs as the obstacle between them and control of what we hear, what we read and see, what we think. The truth itself is in their sights, to be brought down to make way for their lies. But they will fail, just as the whole globalist effort will fail. The truth is perennial as the grass that grows through concrete given time. Many are the truth tellers. From every walk of life they come. The truth will out, and the liars will fall.